Hey there, so rare plants, I've been collecting them ever since lockdown and selling cuttings here and there along the way. And I just wanted to share some things that I have learned over the last few years of doing this that could help you if you're thinking of getting into the same thing. So if you're wanting to sell the cuttings either to be able to then invest in more rare plants and just build your collection, or you want to make a little bit of side money, you want to be careful about the mother plants that you're going to buy. And something that I did when I first got into it was a huge mistake, but I feel like we all fall for this when we get into something new. We get caught up in trends, and it's very rare plants, very much like crypto, very much like a lot of these things. And I didn't realize that. I just thought plants are natural. What can you really do there? If people want them, people have to grow them, and it takes a while on these rare plants. That is why they're rarer, because in a lot of cases the leaves come out slower, they're a little bit slower growing. Maybe some of them are a little bit harder to look after, but not in all cases. Actually, I've found that many of them are no more difficult to look after than your regular house plant. So essentially, it's obviously worth having a rare plant instead, because you can actually make a little bit of side money if you want to sell some of the cuttings, unlike plants that you can get in the supermarket. But they do have these trends, and people just get really, really obsessed with wanting a specific thing. I don't know who drives these trends or leads these trends, whether there's some kind of, they're held back on purpose, or there's some kind of push on social media. I don't know quite what it is, but there are trends where people just obsessively want a particular plant, and there's not enough plants to give to them. But what I didn't realize is there's this thing called tissue culture. And tissue culture is where you just take a little tiny bit of stem, like a tiny piece, and you inject some stem. I don't know the exact way it's done, but you take out these little stem cells or whatever they are. Probably not stem cells, it's probably not the right term, and then you can grow hundreds or thousands of plants from these tiny little bit of stem. Whereas when you're a grower and you want to take a cutting, you've got to take sort of a leaf down to the node. So, from this massive plant here, which I bought up, maybe at best I could get, and this is huge, right? This doesn't grow like this overnight. For this to get like this is a good few years growth. And I could probably, I don't know if I can really show you the stem that well there, but if I was really, really pushing it and being a bit kamikaze, maybe I could get 5 cuttings off that. And that's how you think it's going to be, right? Whereas when they take these little bits of stem and they create loads of plants, they could probably make thousands of plants from this with just a tiny little piece. And once these plants become really, really popular, there's someone behind the scenes is working out, because every tissue culture has its slight own kind of process. So it's not the same, it's not one process for all plants. They have to work it out individually for the plant. But as soon as somebody works it out, it's like go. They can create absolutely tons and tons of plants. So they don't really bother doing this for the ones that are not that popular, is what I found. They do this for the ones that obviously everyone's like, oh my God, I really, really want this plant. And some of these plants were like thousands of pounds, hundreds of pounds, and you can now go get them for like $10 or $20 for a cutting. Obviously that is a huge, insane drop, and there's going to be a lot of people that lost a lot of money because they thought, oh, if I buy this plant, I can take a couple of cuttings, I can make my money back, and then I've got the plant. But that, in a very quick space of time, wasn't going to happen, because the market just goes psh, and it is because of these tissue cultures where they can just mass produce these plants. And this is how most plants are sold in supermarkets. And if everybody just relied on taking cuttings from living plants, we wouldn't have these insane ups and downs. It would just be like a growing market where maybe it would slowly peter off as more people bought these plants and could provide cuttings, etc. But the fact that it dropped so quickly is because someone has suddenly decided, oh, that plant is worth producing en masse, so I'm going to do it through a tissue culture, and then suddenly there's loads and loads of plantlets available and the price is just going to go whoosh. So what you really want to do if you're collecting rare plants, I've come to the realization, is you want to get, well, this is my strategy now anyways, maybe it's not for everybody, but if a plant's really, really popular and everybody wants it and everybody's talking about it and it's kind of the it plant in the rare community, it's probably not worth buying, because if you come back to it in a year's time, you'll probably be able to get it for a really low price. But I've noticed that some of the not so talked about plants that are just, you know, casually rare, but no one really talks about them, they've kind of gone up in value because more and more people start to find out about them. They just kind of want to add them to their collection, because once you get into collecting rare plants, you know, especially if you have a particular, like I really like philodendrons, for example, and you kind of, there's something enjoyable about seeing how many of these guys can I collect. You know, they're all different, they've all got their unique look, and you sort of then want to, you know, get lots of different types of them. So these lesser known ones, people eventually are going to want to add them to their collection if they continue collecting, most likely. But this is my new strategy. Buying anything that's like really, really expensive, really, really popular, it's only worth it if you can reproduce it, get your money back in the very, very early days. Because otherwise someone is gonna tissue culture this, they're gonna work out the exact process for that plant, and they're just gonna start listing loads of them, and your plant is just gonna be like that in value very, very quickly. And you know, it's the same in crypto, isn't it? You buy on the rumor and you sell on the news. Like once everyone is talking about a plant, once everybody wants a plant, it's probably too late. When to have gotten that plant was like 1 to 2 years before. So follow crypto. If you're into crypto, that's the exact same thing with plants. You know, if something's been highly talked about, everybody wants something, the price is going through the roof, it's going to drop very, very quickly. And unless you can get into tissue culture yourself and you can mass produce these plants, your chances of making any money off it is probably slim, and you're probably going to lose. Whereas if you get some plants that are just rare but no one's really talking about them, to me they seem to be the best option, because they might have their day where they're also popular and you're already in on it and you've already got a few, you know, plants on the go, or they'll just maintain their value. As soon as something is popular enough that they want to start making it en masse, yeah, it's probably too late. So that's some of my tips if you want to get into rare plant collecting. And like I said, even if you don't want to make money from it, a lot of people probably want to sell some cuttings in order to be able to buy new plants. So, you know, you don't really want to be losing hundreds of dollars on a plant, on a wish list plant, and then you wait a year and it's worth next to nothing, right? So yeah, if something's really being lauded, it's really popular, there's not enough stock for people to get their hands on and people are desperate for it, then it's probably not going to be worth that in a year's time. So just be aware of that, because I think a lot of people make that mistake. They think that they can, you know, they think it's always going to stay that price. And yeah, plants are just like any other kind of hype thing, really, where they have their highs and they have their lows. And I'm not sure when they start making tissue cultures if they can ever really get that. I mean, if you've got, another thing with collecting rare plants is getting good plants, like good mother plants, if they variegated. So, you know, your pink princess, all the variegated plants, variegation level does matter, like variegation monstera, and they're always going to hold more value if you've got a great example, because there are not that many around. And I think people think there's more than there are, because a lot of people just see one of that type of plant, like a pink princess or a variegated monstera, and they're like, wow, it's really cheap. But the thing is, if it's not got much variegation on, it's unlikely to get more. I'm not saying you don't sometimes get these amazing turnarounds when you change the conditions of your plant. But what I found from collecting for a few years now is really the stock mother plant really matters. If it's got an amazing level of variegation, it's probably going to continue with the plant. If it doesn't, it's probably always going to be somewhat poor. And it's just a lot better to pay a bit more and to have a good stock plant, because they are unusual and they do maintain a little bit of rarity even when that plant loses rarity. Like right now, if you've got a pink princess, that's already bombed in price. If you've got one that's giving you regular half moons, it's like a really, really high level of variegation, you're still in a minority. It still has a value because there aren't that many of those plants around. Like if you go look, there are not as many plants as I think people think with a really, really good level of variegation. There's a lot of poor variegation plants out there. And people think that they're suddenly gonna turn. And in my experience, the stock is everything, the mother plant is everything. Pay more to get something that is actually gonna look what you want it to look and is gonna produce what you want it to produce. Of course, there's no guarantees. You can buy an amazing variegation plant and it reverts, whatever, but it's rare. In my experience, it's rare. Generally, what you see is what you get, and if it does start turning, then you can even, you can go back and do a cutting and it's probably gonna sprout out a similar level of variegation from lower down. So these are my kind of main 2 tips for collecting rare plants if you've just started, and I hope that helps. All right, thanks, bye.